Who's really holding the mic?
Ever wonder why your favorite late night hosts keep getting time off right after saying something spicy? Coincidence, maybe? But when the jokes start disappearing faster than the punchlines, it's worth asking, who's really holding the mic?
Tonight, we're diving into the world where comedy meets censorship, truth meets television, and the loudest laughs sometimes come from what we're not allowed to say. Let's take a look at our three keywords.
Censorship, a disruption in the chain of communication between author and audience that is the result of power imbalances. When government engages in the suppression or prohibition of books, films, news, or other media considered obscene, politically unacceptable, or a threat to security.
Representation, a term used to describe the constructed nature of media depictions of people, objects, and events. Gatekeeping, the process of deciding what to publish or share with audience.
Who's really holding the mic? Stephen Colbert's Late Show became more than just a comedy program. It turned into a cultural background for what could and couldn't be said on mainstream television. When CBS announced the show's cancellation in July of 2025, it was framed as a financial decision, but many viewers and industry insiders sensed something deeper. Colbert had built his career on sharp political satire, fearlessly mocking powerful figures, including Donald Trump, and holding both politicians and corporations accountable. His humor wasn't just entertainment, it was a form of truth telling that resonated with audiences hungry for honesty in a time of fake news. That's where the ideas of censorship, representation, and gatekeeping collide. The show's cancellation reflected a kind of modern censorship, not through government bans, but through quieter corporate decisions that limit uncomfortable speech. It revealed the gatekeepers who control which voices make it to air, showing how power and profit often shape what we're allowed to hear. And at its core, it raised questions about representation. Whose perspectives get protected in public discourse, and whose are silenced when they challenge authority? Colbert's case reminds us that comedy, even when wrapped in laughter, can be a powerful act of resistance, and that when those voices are muted, we lose not just a late night host, but a piece of our collective conversation.
Jimmy Kimmel Live. In September 2025, Kimmel made a monologue comment following the killing of conservative activist Charlie Kirk, saying the MAGA gang was desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. His comments drew strong backlash from conservative media. Disney and ABC suspended Jimmy Kimmel Live, and after 6 days off air, the show was back on. He returned and said an emotional monologue defending free speech, clarifying his intent, and acknowledging how some of his remarks have been perceived. He says that his remarks were intentionally and maliciously mischaracterized. This situation equals what censorship, gatekeeping, and representation is. Censorship because the ABC and Disney suspended Kimmel's show, silencing him from the air for nearly a week. The FCC's chair warning to broadcasters about regulatory consequences, added political pressure showing how the government influence can indirectly restrict speech. Gatekeeping because Disney and ABC executives acted as gatekeepers, deciding whether the Kimmel show could air and under what conditions. Other stations limited by refusing to broadcast his shows and how corporate and political gatekeepers filter what information people are exposed to. Lastly, representation, because his political satire represents a liberal comedic voice that challenged conservative narratives. It sparked debate over whether comedians can still critique political figures freely, whether they must avoid certain topics.
Donald Trump's relationship with late night television, especially with hosts like Stephen Colbert and Jimmy Kimmel, reveals how censorship, representation, and gatekeeping operate in today's media landscape. During and after his presidency, Trump frequently targeted comedians who mocked him, labeling them disrespectful or unfunny, and often suggesting that networks should take action against them. His public criticism and behind the scenes pressure created an atmosphere of censorship where networks and executives grew cautious about how far satire could go without provoking political retaliation. The pressure became visible when The Late Show with Stephen Colbert was canceled in July 2025, shortly after Colbert condemned a settlement between Trump and CBS. Similarly, Jimmy Kimmel's suspension from ABC after a controversial monologue about Trump supporters reflected how gatekeeping works in real time. Executives and regulators deciding who can speak and how much truth is acceptable for broadcast. These moments also expose the struggle over representation, whose voices are allowed to challenge power and whose are muted when their commentary becomes inconvenient. Through satire, Colbert and Kimmel tried to represent ordinary viewers frustrated by corruption and hypocrisy. But Trump's influence over media institutions demonstrated how fragile that freedom can be. In a sense, their conflicts with him weren't just about jokes, they were about who controls the national conversation and what stories are allowed to be told.
So who's really holding the mic? Maybe it's not the comedians, maybe it's the corporations, the regulators, and the politicians whispering from behind the curtain.
Because when laughter gets regulated, truth becomes negotiable, and silence starts to sound suspiciously like control.